So we've made it to number 4 of the video series about well-being, leadership, and policy. In this last section, I discuss your career development, and some ideas, and I share some resources on how your career choices could have a very strong impact on the well-being of other people in the world. Most of you, when you think of saving the world, you may think of the ocean or sea turtles and that kind of thing. But sometimes there are policy writing opportunities, there are research opportunities, there are other jobs that seem regular and mundane, but that could have a very strong impact in the world. You may be a valuable team player on a project. You may not be the lead researcher, but you may be assisting the lead researcher accomplish amazing things. So what does that look like? One researcher named Benjamin Todd, he started something called 80,000 hours, and 80,000 hours represents the number of hours that you might spend in your career. He talks about career development in a way that makes people reflect on what careers they're going to choose if they should want to make a difference, a positive change in the world, for example. He first found that the traditional career advice he was getting fails to resolve the most complex problems in the world. And we know there are a lot of challenges to be met in the world today for future generations. And he talks about different paradigms of problem solving. So is it better to help your neighbor or to help 100 people 100 years from now? So to think a little bit differently about proximity in terms of timelines, in terms of geography, and gives you sort of these valuable research reflections about how you want to make your contributions in the world. He suggests 3 things. He suggests that you find work that is to have the best impact, that is neglected. Maybe people haven't really noticed it. For example, people may be spending millions and millions and millions of dollars in cancer research, but maybe we would be better off to spend a fraction of that cost to prevent cancer rather than trying to cure cancer. Next, you might think of something, how important is what you're doing? So is it more important to prevent cancer rather than cure it? And the next one, is it tractable? Can you actually control it or influence whatever problem you're trying to solve? And sometimes the problems that you're trying to solve are not scientific problems. Sometimes they are social challenges. So they walk through a great many number of these different types of challenges that we face. Here's 4 priority areas that they look at. The first one is, how can you positively shape the development of artificial intelligence? We know that artificial intelligence is going to have a substantial impact on the world. We know that policy and lawmakers are not caught up with the possibilities of artificial intelligence. And so it is incredibly critical that we look at all aspects of artificial intelligence. And they even show some other ways where you might make a big difference but know nothing about artificial intelligence. For example, being the personal assistant to organize the life of somebody at the scale of Geoffrey Hinton, for example, who is sort of the main leader or thought leader in the area of artificial intelligence. What if you were to make a thought leader or a world-renowned researcher 10% more productive as their personal assistant? You could have a very big impact on the world, because that 10% increase in productivity could really help that researcher discover the kinds of things that are really going to help others' well-being. Additionally, global priorities research. So when you look at ideas of globalization, or what are the priorities that we should be looking at with other countries as an international cosmos. So working on problems, for example, like the United Nations Global Compact, working on problems about climate change. These are not things that are going to be solved by individual countries, but rather by an international consortium. So we spend over $500 billion on this a year as a planet, so to speak. So if you're able to better direct some of those resources, that could have a very large impact on some of the world's biggest problems. Another thing you might do is to establish a model for finding the most effective campaigns that are going to help others. So they do talk a lot of econometric models, but it does create some opportunities for reflection into, are we better off to spend $3,000 locally, or would it have a bigger impact if we spent it in another so-called a developing country? And so developing these models for effective altruism could really help people spend money in places that are going to be more effective. And because we donate so much money, we want it to go to places that are going to be measured and highly effective. Finally, reducing global catastrophic biological risks. We're in the middle of a pandemic. Some people predicted the pandemic, others did not. Some dismantled, like in the US, they dismantled a lot of organizations that did this type of work. When you look at the paradox of the United States situation right now, where they have some of the best scientists in the world, and yet their results of handling the pandemic are some of the worst in the world. So when you look at this type of work, there may not be a high level of chance that this type of thing is going to happen. But if you're the one doing the work on it and it does happen, you are ready. So this type of work can be incredibly important. So these are the types of careers that they've listed as priorities, and they give sort of the rationale, and I've given you the links so you can look deeper into this, and this will help you reflect about what kinds of choices you can make or will have in your careers. Finally, I want to leave you with this last section. When you are working on an event here on the campus, when you are working on an initiative, when you are representing a group of people at Senate, when you are taking on a new initiative, I want you to learn to ask the right questions. Is this really going to help people's well-being? I don't want you to be fooled by proxies. And sometimes people look at means as an end. For example, some people will say, well, we will be a great university because we're going to recruit lots of students. Well, that's not really a strong measure of whether or not we are a great university. Looking at GDP as the sole measure of a nation's wealth is, as we have seen by Mahbub al-Haq, not a strong measure. The real value of a nation or of a university are its people and whether or not they're able to lead flourishing lives. I hope this presentation has taught you to ask some more in-depth questions and have better reflections about what you can do and accomplish as a leader. More importantly, whenever you're doing events, whenever you're doing initiatives, whenever you're representing people, I hope you ask this central question. And that question is, what are people able to do and be? Look around the room, see if they're engaged, ask them if they're able to do and be the kinds of things that are going to allow them to lead flourishing lives. I've left you with some resources. I'll share the PowerPoint and also my references. There's some great books here that you may want to review. If you're more interested in these topics, take one of my classes in Ways of Knowing or Ways of Doing, or reach out to me and I'll be happy to send more resources. Finally, I want to thank you for being a civic-minded leader, for contributing to the University of Windsor campus, for contributing to your local communities, for taking the time to care about others and the initiatives on campus. In my mind, there's no greater community than those that care for one another and give back and volunteer their time for the benefit of others. Congratulations for being part of this initiative, and thank you very much for taking the time to share in these ideas with me today.